A world unfairly divided. The breeding ground of world wars ignites a third. Humankind has witnessed two world wars, and both had a common root cause: the struggle for power and resources that weren't shared fairly. Today, as geopolitical tensions rise, the unequal distribution of resources continues to be a potential trigger for a large-scale conflict, a World War III. Europe, with its strategic location and diverse cultures, has been the center of many major conflicts throughout human history. In particular, both World War I and World War II erupted from this continent, causing devastating consequences not only for Europe, but also for the entire world. The root cause of World War I stemmed from the fierce competition among European empires for colonies, markets, and political influence. The formation of two opposing military blocs, the Central Powers, Germany, Austria-Hungary, Italy, and the Allied Powers, Great Britain, France, Russia, created a tense environment ripe for explosion. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand on June 28, 1914 in Sarajevo by a Serbian nationalist sparked the war, as Germany and Austria-Hungary seized this opportunity to declare war. The aftermath of World War I, especially the harsh terms of the Treaty of Versailles, caused deep resentment in Germany, paving the way for the rise of fascism. Nazi Germany's territorial expansion and ambitions for dominance, coupled with the initial indifference of the European powers, led to Germany's invasion of Poland on September 1, 1939, starting World War II. Today, Europe continues to face geopolitical tensions that could lead to a new global conflict, the Russia-Ukraine conflict. This conflict has raised concerns about the possibility of escalating into a larger war, especially as NATO countries increase military support for Ukraine. Tensions between Russia and NATO. NATO's eastward expansion and Russia's strong reaction have created a tense environment, with the risk of direct military conflict. Europe's military preparations. Many European countries are increasing their military capabilities, preparing for the possibility of a major conflict in the near future. History has shown that competition for power, lack of dialogue, and misunderstandings can lead to devastating wars. In the current context, the failure of nations to find common ground and the continued escalation of tensions could lead to a third world war, with unimaginable consequences for humanity. Europe, once the cradle of two world wars, needs to learn from the past to avoid repeating the same mistakes, ensuring peace and stability for the region and the world. During President Donald Trump's second term, U.S. foreign policy went through some big changes, especially with NATO, the European Union, and the conflict in Ukraine. Mr. Trump took a strong stance, focusing on America's interests and lessening military action overseas. President Trump strongly encouraged everyone involved in the Ukraine conflict to talk peace. He stressed that the U.S. couldn't keep sending military aid forever without clear progress towards peace. Canceling a mineral deal between the U.S. and Ukraine after a tense meeting between Mr. Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky raised worries about the future of U.S. military aid to Ukraine. President Trump often criticized NATO and the European Union for their roles in the Ukraine conflict. He believed that NATO expanding eastward and the EU's involvement helped cause tension with Russia, leading to the current conflict. He also wanted NATO countries to double their defense spending to share the cost of the military with the U.S., and threatened to leave the alliance if they didn't. The February 28, 2025 meeting between President Trump and President Zelensky at the White House became big international news. The meeting was supposed to be about signing an important mineral deal and talking about military support, but the meeting quickly turned into a heated argument. President Trump accused Mr. Zelensky of gambling with World War III and disrespecting the U.S., which led to the mineral deal being canceled and raised questions about future U.S. military aid to Ukraine. With his America First policy and focus on the nation's interests, President Trump and his political allies tended to avoid getting involved in military actions overseas. If Mr. Trump or someone with similar views stays in power, the U.S. might choose to stay out of major international conflicts, including a possible World War III. This viewpoint is based on prioritizing domestic issues and avoiding wars that don't directly benefit the U.S. In the turbulent political landscape of the 21st century, the U.S. electing Donald Trump for a second term brought significant changes to foreign policy and the country's standing on the world stage. Many people believe Mr. Trump is one of the best US presidents in the last 100 years because of his ability to promote peace without using military force, earning the respect and admiration of many countries. From his first term, Mr. Trump promoted his America First policy, focusing on national interests and limiting military involvement overseas. In his second term, he continued this policy, focusing on rebuilding the economy, improving infrastructure, and creating jobs for Americans. This focus not only helped the U.S. recover from economic challenges but also strengthened its global position. Mr. Trump's foreign policy shifted the U.S. direction, from increasing competition with China to withdrawing from international organizations that didn't directly benefit America. He also pushed for fairer trade deals, making sure the U.S. wasn't being taken advantage of in international agreements. These actions made many countries rethink their relationship with the U.S. and have more respect for Washington's stance. One of the highlights of Mr. Trump's second term was his effort to end the conflict in Ukraine. He encouraged peace talks between Russia and Ukraine to end the long war and bring stability to the region. Despite many challenges, his persistence and determination led to significant progress in the peace process. Mr. Trump also played a key role in signing the Abraham Accords, normalizing relations between Israel and Arab nations like the United Arab Emirates, UAE, and Bahrain. These agreements not only brought peace to the Middle East but also opened up opportunities for economic cooperation and development. Mr. Trump's role in promoting peace in the Middle East has been widely recognized and praised. His continuous efforts to promote peace led to his nomination for the Nobel Peace Prize. In 2024, he was nominated for his role in signing the Abraham Accords, which helped normalize relations between Israel and Arab nations. He was also nominated for the prize in 2021 for his efforts to end conflict and promote world peace. Even though he hasn't won the prize, his multiple nominations show the international community's recognition of his contributions to peace. Many believe that, if possible, former President Obama's Nobel Peace Prize should be given to Mr. Trump to recognize his efforts and achievements in bringing peace to the world. Mr. Trump's foreign policy has received support not only from Americans, but also from the international community. Many countries have expressed respect for his firm but fair stance on international issues. His willingness to face challenges and make decisive decisions has earned the respect of many world leaders. Americans also appreciate his efforts to protect national interests and ensure the country's security. This support was shown through his re-election for a second term as U.S. president. Many believe that under Mr. Trump's leadership, the U.S. will maintain its superpower status and play a vital role in keeping world peace and stability. If World War III breaks out, Europe could become the center of the conflict, facing devastating consequences, making 60% of its land uninhabitable for 100 years. This scenario isn't just based on history, but also reflects the real dangers in today's geopolitical landscape. History has shown that Europe is often where world wars begin. Both World War I and World War II started with conflicts on this continent, leading to terrible destruction. Currently, tensions between Russia and the West, especially concerning Ukraine, raise concerns about the possibility of a new global conflict. European officials have warned about a World War III scenario if Ukraine joins NATO while the conflict with Russia is still ongoing. If World War III happens and nuclear weapons are used, the consequences for Europe would be catastrophic. A nuclear war between Russia and the West could lead to widespread destruction, killing millions of people and making many areas uninhabitable. Studies show that a full-scale nuclear war could cause a nuclear winter, lowering global temperatures and causing widespread famine. Tensions between Russia and NATO have led both sides to increase their military preparations. Leaked German documents reveal plans to deploy 800,000 NATO troops if Russia attacks, suggesting that Europe seems to be preparing for World War III. This military buildup increases the risk of escalating the conflict, especially when both sides possess nuclear weapons. If nuclear weapons are used in World War III, many areas in Europe will be contaminated with radiation, making them uninhabitable for decades, even centuries. Large cities could be wiped out, infrastructure completely destroyed, leading to a serious humanitarian crisis. Millions of people would become refugees, putting a huge strain on neighboring countries and the international community. In addition to the human cost, World War III would have serious impacts on the environment and the global economy. The destruction of forests, pollution of water and air would have long-term consequences for the ecosystem. The global economy would fall into crisis due to disruptions in supply chains, loss of assets, and declining investor confidence. To avoid this catastrophic scenario, the international community needs to increase dialogue, reduce tensions, and find peaceful solutions to current conflicts. Controlling nuclear weapons, building trust between nations, and promoting international cooperation are important steps to ensure security and stability for Europe and the world. In short, the risk of World War III and 60% of Europe becoming uninhabitable for 100 years is a worrying prospect. To avoid this, countries need to cooperate closely, resolve conflicts through dialogue, and maintain peace globally. With the ongoing and complicated conflict in Ukraine, the question is whether European countries like the UK, France, Poland, Germany, and other EU members might increase their support for Ukraine, perhaps even sending troops directly, if things get worse. This could escalate the conflict and even spark a third world war. Since the conflict began, European nations have actively supported Ukraine with both financial and military aid. The United Kingdom. On March 1, 2025, the UK announced a new loan of £2.6 billion, $2.85 billion, for Ukraine to strengthen its military. This loan will be repaid using profits from seized Russian assets frozen by the European Union under sanctions. European Union, EU, the EU has agreed to increase military and financial aid to Ukraine, with total commitments exceeding €130 billion. This aid aims to maintain Ukraine's financial stability and help the country buy necessary military equipment. Poland, according to the Kiel Institute for the World Economy, since the escalation of the Ukraine conflict in 2022, Warsaw has provided Kiev with over €4.5 billion, $4.7 billion in aid, over 70% of which is military support. However, Poland recently stopped its military aid to Ukraine, saying it could no longer afford to continue. With the conflict dragging on and showing no signs of cooling down, European countries have discussed sending peacekeeping forces to Ukraine. The UK and France are developing a plan to deploy up to 30,000 European troops to Ukraine, provided a ceasefire agreement is reached between Moscow and Kyiv. The plan's success hinges on US President Donald Trump agreeing to provide limited military support to protect and assist European forces while deterring Russian aggression. European pressure on the US. Europe is pressuring the US to support a European-led military alliance in deploying troops to Ukraine after a peace agreement with Russia is secured. France and the UK want the US to provide intelligence, logistics, and air support, even without directly committing ground troops. Discussions at the Paris conference. European leaders met in Paris to discuss Europe's role in ensuring Ukraine's security. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer expressed his willingness to deploy British troops to Ukraine for peacekeeping duties, emphasizing that the conflict in Ukraine is also a matter of European and British national security. Deploying European military forces to Ukraine carries the risk of escalating the conflict, especially without agreement and close coordination between all parties involved. Russia's reaction. Russia may view the deployment of European military forces to Ukraine as a provocation, leading to a strong military response and expanding the conflict beyond Ukraine's borders. NATO's involvement. If NATO member states officially deploy troops to Ukraine, this could trigger Article 5 of the NATO Treaty on Collective Defense, leading to the entire alliance's involvement in the conflict and paving the way for a Third World War. The situation in Ukraine. If Ukraine refuses to negotiate peace and continues to lose ground, pressure on European countries to intervene militarily will increase, especially as their security interests are threatened. The world is on the brink of the biggest conflict in modern history, as unresolved conflicts from the past continue to push humanity to the edge of war. History has shown us that Europe is the birthplace of world wars, and once again geopolitical tensions on this continent could spark a new global conflict. If World War III does break out, Europe will be the hardest hit. Studies have shown that if a nuclear conflict occurs, 60% of Europe could become a dead zone, uninhabitable for a century. Not only would there be a devastating loss of life, but the ecosystem, the environment, and the economy would also be destroyed. A nuclear winter would lower global temperatures, causing terrible consequences like famine, reduced food production, and large-scale migration crises. In that scenario, Europe would no longer be a center of global power. Instead, the continent would be plunged into chaos, with millions of people displaced and seeking refuge in areas that are still habitable. This is no longer a far-fetched theory but a real danger as world powers are increasingly locked in confrontation with no signs of de-escalation. One of the factors that could trigger a world war is the aggression of some European countries, especially the UK, France, Poland, and Germany. These countries have continuously provided military aid to Ukraine, increased weapons production, and called for stronger intervention from the West. If Ukraine continues to lose ground on the battlefield and refuses to negotiate peace, the pressure on European countries to deploy troops directly will grow. In a worst-case scenario, the deployment of British and French soldiers to Ukraine could be seen by Russia as a provocation, forcing Moscow to respond with more drastic military measures. Once NATO officially intervenes, the entire alliance will be drawn into the war, and at that point there will be no turning back. World War III would not just be a conventional war, but a devastating confrontation, where all sides possess nuclear weapons capable of leveling cities in an instant. In short, the world is walking a tightrope between peace and war. The lessons of World War I and II seem to have not been enough to prevent a new conflict. The United States, under President Trump, might try to escape before the world collapses, but Europe won't be so lucky. If aggressive nations continue to push for military intervention, if Ukraine refuses to de-escalate, and if world powers cannot find a lasting diplomatic solution, then the prospect of World War III is only a matter of time. History will repeat itself, but this time the consequences will not be limited to one continent, but will be a disaster for all of humanity. Thank you everyone for joining us on this channel. I'm truly grateful to have you all supporting, watching, and sharing my videos. Every view, every comment, every like motivates me to continue creating and bringing you even better content. This isn't just a video channel, it's a place where we can learn together, share interesting things, and build an amazing community. Your support has helped this channel grow and allowed me to create more engaging content. If you have any ideas or requests for future content, please don't hesitate to leave a comment. I truly value every single suggestion. Once again, thank you all so much. Let's continue this journey together and create many more memorable moments.